The sky over Arizona looked calm that morning, painted in soft blue with streaks of gold drifting across the desert horizon. Inside the cockpit of a twin-engine military aircraft, Flight Officer Lena Hayes sat quietly, adjusting her headset with steady but nervous fingers. She was not the loud, fearless kind of pilot people imagined. Lena was the quiet type, the one who studied late, listened more than she spoke, and carried her confidence on the inside rather than on her sleeves. Her captain for the day, Major Daniel Collins, was the opposite, seasoned, calm under pressure, a man who had seen storms both in the sky and in life. Their mission was simple, a routine training flight, a midday landing, and then back to base before lunch. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that hinted at the nightmare waiting for them just beyond the mountains. But at 11:14 a.m., everything changed. A piercing alarm shattered the quiet cockpit. Engine 1 failure. The aircraft jolted violently, as if something had punched it from below. Lena's heart slammed in her chest as smoke drifted from the left engine. Collins reacted instantly, switching controls and barking. Shut it down. Keep her level. But before he could stabilize anything, a deeper groaning noise ripped through the fuselage, followed by a sudden drop on the right side. A second alarm shrieked. Hydraulic pressure critical. The aircraft shuddered as if it were trying to tear itself apart. Lena's breath hitched. She transmitted the emergency call, her voice trembling. Control, Guardian 20, we've lost an engine. Possible hydraulic failure, requesting priority landing. But the situation turned deadly before help could arrive. A violent crack burst from the right panel. A metal fragment launched across the cockpit, slashing into Major Collins' shoulder and chest. His cry was cut off as he slumped over, blood soaking through his flight suit. His right hand slid off the controls. His breathing turned shallow, and the plane began to fall. The nose dipped sharply. Alarm screamed. The cockpit filled with the chaotic flashing of red lights. Lena yelled his name, her stomach twisting in terror. With no time to think, no time to doubt, she lunged forward and seized the controls. The aircraft tilted downward at a terrifying angle, the desert rushing closer and closer. For one frozen second, panic almost won. Her hands shook violently. Her lungs felt trapped. Her mind whispered the one thing she feared most. You can't do this. Then something shifted inside her. A memory. A voice from training. A quiet lesson spoken by her instructor years ago. In the moment of truth, your fear will try to fly the plane. Don't let it. Her breath steadied. Her grip tightened. She pulled the control column with every ounce of strength in her body. The aircraft wobbled, groaned, then slowly leveled, mere seconds away from a fatal stall. Her heartbeat pounded against her ribs, but she didn't let go. She couldn't. Collins was still alive beside her. The plane was still fighting. And she knew one thing with absolute certainty. If she didn't take control right now, they wouldn't survive the next minute. The aircraft trembled violently as Lena fought to keep it level. Every movement felt delayed, heavy, and unpredictable, like she was steering through wet concrete. Without hydraulics, the controls resisted her touch, forcing her to rely on sheer strength and instinct. Her breaths came quick and shallow, each one tasting like fear mixed with determination. She pressed the radio switch with a trembling thumb. Control, Guardian 20, pilot is incapacitated. Co-pilot in command. Her voice cracked mid-sentence, betraying the panic she tried desperately to hide. There was a long second of silence on the line, long enough for doubt to dig its claws deeper into her chest, before the tower finally responded. Copy, Guardian 20. We're tracking your position. Maintain heading 170. Maintain heading. If only it were that simple. The aircraft drifted left again, then jerked back right as if possessed. Lena gripped the controls harder. Sweat dripped from her forehead, blurring her vision. She wiped it quickly with the back of her glove, trying to ignore the faint groans of metal echoing through the cockpit walls. Collins lay slumped beside her, his breathing uneven, his skin growing pale. She wanted to check his wounds, but she couldn't spare a single hand, not when the aircraft threatened to fall apart every time she blinked. Then, through the static-filled silence, another voice broke through the radio. This one steady, confident, almost grounding. Guardian 20, this is Falcon Flight. We're approaching your position. Stand by for visual. Lena blinked, stunned. F-22s? She had trained with them in simulators, but had never flown with real fighter escorts. Her heart lifted for the first time since the disaster began, but fear still clung to her like a shadow. Falcon flight. I have minimal control. I can't hold the line. A calm reply came instantly. We've got you, Lieutenant. You're not alone up there. Seconds later, two sleek, gray shapes cut through the sky, emerging beside her like silent guardians. They slid into formation with the precision of dancers, wings gleaming under the sun. For the first time since the alarms began, something inside Lena loosened, just a little. Not safety, not comfort, but a glimmer of hope. The aircraft trembled again. Hard. Lena gasped, steadying it with a desperate push of the rudder. Her arms ached. Her nerves burned. Her heart pounded loud enough to drown out the alarms. She thought she might break, until one of the fighter pilots spoke softly, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. Ease your right rudder. Small correction. That's it, good. She followed the instructions, and the plane steadied. Not perfectly, but enough to breathe again. Then a deeper, older voice entered the channel, one she recognized instantly. Lieutenant Hayes, this is General Lawson. I'm patched in from command. Her throat tightened. Sir? I'm trying. No excuses. Just listen. His tone wasn't harsh. It was steady, solid, like standing on a rock in a storm. You trained for this more than you realize. Fear will try to cloud your decisions. But courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means you act anyway. His words struck something deep inside her. Her breath steadied. Her shoulders relaxed. Not fully, but enough to keep fighting. The F-22 pilots tightened their formation, reflecting sunlight off their canopies. One tilted his wings gently toward her, a silent message. We're here. Another voice added, softer than the rest, belonging to a female pilot. We're staying with you all the way home, Lieutenant. Follow our lead. Lena's vision blurred with tears. Not from fear this time, but from the overwhelming realization that she wasn't battling the sky alone anymore. She had allies. She had guidance. She had a chance. And for the first time since the chaos began, she believed she might actually make it home. The minutes that followed felt like an eternity suspended in the sky. The aircraft shook with every gust of wind, its wounded frame rattling as if begging to fall apart. Lena's hands were locked around the controls, her fingers stiff, her knuckles white beneath her gloves. Every muscle in her arms screamed, but she didn't dare loosen her grip even for a heartbeat. The F-22s held their formation flawlessly, one on each side, their wings slicing through the air with calm confidence. Their presence was like a heartbeat, steady, constant, grounding her whenever the aircraft lurched or rolled. Despite the chaos, they remained unmoving, as if the storm that consumed her plane couldn't touch them. The radio crackled again with the voice of Falcon Lead. Guardian 20, your altitude is dipping. Add a touch of throttle. Small adjustment. Lena's breath shook as she followed the instruction. The aircraft rose slightly, fighting the wind with stubborn resistance. She exhaled shakily, feeling sweat slide down her back despite the cold air blowing from the vents. Her nerves felt frayed, stretched thin like wires ready to snap. Another tremor shook the aircraft. The left wing dipped sharply. Lena gasped and corrected it with a desperate twist of the rudder. The cockpit rattled, metal groaning like it was about to rip open. Alarms flickered but didn't fully trigger, almost as if even the warning systems were exhausted. Through her panic, the female F-22 pilot spoke again, her tone calm, almost soothing. You're doing good, Lieutenant. Slow breathing. Match our pace. We're right here. Lena tried to inhale deeply, but her lungs felt tight. She forced herself to look outside. The fighters were still there, unwavering, guiding her like celestial beacons against a storm. Their silhouettes reflected in her canopy, two steady guardians refusing to let her fall. General Lawson's voice returned, low and deliberate. Lieutenant Hayes, focus on my voice. Block out everything else. Fear is loud, but discipline is louder. Lena swallowed hard. Why, yes, sir. Good. From here to the base, every decision you make keeps two people alive. You have already proven you can control that aircraft. Now prove to yourself that you can finish what you started. His words hit her like a warm weight, one that steadied her rather than sinking her. She shifted her posture, adjusted her grip, and fixed her gaze forward. Still, the plane's suffering only intensified. The damaged hydraulic system fought against her every move. The manual overrides felt stiff, barely cooperating. The control stick felt heavier with each correction. At one point, she felt a surge of dizziness wash over her, and she blinked rapidly to force her vision to clear. "Stay with me," she whispered to herself. "Just stay with me." Beside her, Collins groaned faintly. The sound sent a jolt of fear through her. His life was tied to every decision she made, every second she held on. She leaned slightly toward him without taking her hands off the controls. "Hang in there, sir, we're getting you home." Falcon Lead spoke again. "Guardian 2-0, begin gradual descent. We'll lead you through shallow angles. Don't fight the drift, correct gently." She nodded instinctively even though they couldn't see her. The F-22s tipped their wings in silent cues. Lena followed each one, relying more on their guidance than her own failing instruments. Her heart hammered with every adjustment. Each 1,000 feet she descended felt like a battle won against impossible odds. The base was still miles away, but with every passing minute, the dots on her radar inched closer toward safety. The cockpit smelled of hot metal and burned insulation. Her hands felt numb. Her arms trembled, but she refused to let go. She couldn't let go, because for the first time since the crisis began, a fragile but undeniable truth began to form inside her. She could actually make it home, and she wasn't finding her way alone. She was being escorted by silent warriors who believed in her strength even when she doubted it herself. The runway finally appeared in the distance, a thin gray strip surrounded by open desert, shimmering slightly under the afternoon heat. To any other pilot, it might have looked familiar, even welcoming. But to Lena, it looked impossibly far away, like a thread she had to land on while the entire sky tried to tear her apart. Her heartbeat thudded painfully as the aircraft descended. The closer she got, the more violently the plane shook. The wounded engine coughed and groaned, the damaged hydraulics straining against every correction. Lena's arms felt like they were turning to stone, heavy from the effort of forcing the aircraft to obey her. The tower's voice came through, clipped but calm. "Guardian 2-0, you are cleared for emergency landing. Winds 10 knots from the west. All emergency units in position." Lena swallowed hard. Her mouth felt dry. "Copy, beginning final approach." The female F-22 pilot's gentle voice followed immediately. "You're lined up perfectly, Lieutenant. Keep your wings level. You're almost there. Almost there." The words gave her a small burst of strength, but the plane had its own plans. The nose suddenly drifted to the left. Hard. Lena gasped, correcting it with a forceful push of the rudder. The stick barely moved, resisting as if glued in place. Her muscles burned, her shoulders shook, but the nose slowly crept back toward the center. She forced herself to breathe, to focus, to fight. General Lawson's voice came in low and steady, less like a command, more like someone anchoring her to the moment. "Lieutenant Hayes, listen to me. The aircraft will want to drop its left wing. Counter it gently. Don't overcorrect. Trust your instincts." Lena responded through clenched teeth. "Understood, sir." As she neared the runway threshold, the plane dipped again, then jerked violently upward. The manual controls fought back with every inch. Her vision blurred from the strain. She blinked hard, refusing to lose sight of the ground. The fighters stayed beside her, almost wingtip to wingtip. Their silent presence felt like a lifeline in the storm. Falcon Lead spoke calmly. "Ease the throttle, you're descending too fast." "Good. Hold it, hold it." Her breath trembled. Her pulse hammered in her ears. But she did exactly what she was told. "Come on," she whispered to the aircraft. "Just a few more seconds." The wheels hit the runway. Hard. So hard the entire cockpit jolted, slamming her forward in her harness. A screech of grinding metal filled the air, the sound of wheels skidding, rubber burning, sparks spitting across the asphalt. Smoke burst out from beneath the landing gear. The aircraft lurched violently sideways. Lena gritted her teeth and hauled the controls back toward center. The stick felt like it weighed 100 pounds. The brakes fought her touch, but she pressed them with everything she had left. The plane slid, twisted, dragged. Then, finally, it stopped. Silence swallowed the cockpit. Her chest heaved. Her arms trembled. The alarms quieted, fading into distant beeps. She turned her head slowly toward Collins, tears blurring her vision as she found a faint but steady pulse beneath his collar. He was alive. Outside, emergency vehicles rushed toward the aircraft. The hatch was pulled open. Medics climbed inside. Voices shouted orders Lena couldn't fully process. Someone unbuckled her harness and helped her stand. Even though her legs shook so badly, she wasn't sure she could walk. She stepped out onto the runway, boots hitting solid ground. The sun felt warm on her face. The wind brushed against her helmet. She turned back and stared at the damaged plane, its tail smoking, its metal scorched, its left engine nearly torn apart. She had brought that machine home. She had brought her captain home. And even though her entire body trembled, one undeniable truth settled deep inside her chest. She had done the impossible. The roar of engines echoed across the runway as the two F-22s circled overhead, their sleek silhouettes slicing across the sky like silver guardians keeping watch. Lena stood beside the emergency cruise, still trembling, her flight suit smeared with smoke, dust, and streaks of Colin's blood. The desert wind brushed against her helmet, but she barely felt it. Her entire body was numb, part shock, part exhaustion, and part disbelief that she was even standing. The F-22s approached for landing. Their wheels touched down with controlled precision, rolling smoothly across the runway before slowing to a graceful stop. The fighter pilots climbed out one by one, moving with calm purpose. They didn't hurry, and they didn't hesitate. They walked toward her in a unified line, quiet, steady, solemn. Lena felt her heart pound harder with each step they took. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know what to expect. She wasn't even sure she deserved whatever recognition they were here to give. After all, she didn't feel like a hero. Inside, she still felt like the scared co-pilot who had fought the controls with shaking hands and prayed she wouldn't fail. The lead F-22 pilot stopped right in front of her. His visor reflected her tired, overwhelmed face. He stood tall, motionless, silent. The air around them felt still, like the moment right before a storm breaks, except this time the storm was inside her chest. Then, without a single word, he lifted two fingers and touched them gently to the side of his helmet. Slowly, deliberately, he drew his hand down to his heart. It was the silent salute, a gesture rarely given, a gesture earned only by those who had faced the sky at its worst and refused to break. The second F-22 pilot repeated the gesture, then the third, then the fourth. The entire line of warriors saluted her in reverent silence, their hands resting over their hearts. No words, no applause, just quiet respect from those who understood the weight of what she had done better than anyone else. Lena's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, to tell them she wasn't sure how she made it, that she was terrified the entire time, that she thought she had failed more times than she succeeded. But no words came out. All she could do was return the salute with a shaking hand, tears rolling freely down her cheeks. The moment felt unreal, like something carved out of pure emotion and suspended in the air for her to remember forever. Later that evening, when the chaos had settled, Lena found herself sitting alone in the hangar beside the aircraft she had saved. The sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. The damaged plane sat quiet and still, a scarred monument to everything she had survived. The hangar doors creaked open. General Lawson stepped inside, his footsteps echoing softly as he approached. He didn't speak at first. He simply stood beside her, hands behind his back, observing the aircraft with a thoughtful expression. After a long pause, he finally said quietly, "You brought him home, Lieutenant. You brought your captain home, and you saved a $30 million aircraft with half its systems dead. That is not skill alone. That is heart." Lena shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. "I just didn't want him to die, sir." Lawson looked at her with a faint, prideful smile. "That's exactly why you succeeded." He stepped toward the whiteboard mounted near the hangar wall, the one where flight assignments and call signs were listed. Lena's call sign, written in black marker, still read Guardian 20. With slow, deliberate strokes, Lawson crossed it out. Then he wrote a new one. Angel. Lena stared at the word, her breath catching in her chest. Angel. A name she never imagined, never chased, never expected. A name given not for perfection, but for courage. Lawson turned back to her. "From today forward, that is who you are in the sky." Lena didn't know how to respond. She didn't need to, because in her heart, she finally understood something she hadn't allowed herself to believe until now. She wasn't just the quiet co-pilot anymore. She wasn't the scared trainee gripping the controls with trembling hands. She had become something far greater in the eyes of those who saw her flight. She had become a symbol. The next morning dawned quietly over the base, the soft light spreading across the hangars and aircraft like a gentle blessing. There were no reporters, no cameras, no speeches prepared. Yet the atmosphere felt heavier than any official ceremony. The pilots and officers gathered in the open yard. Those who had heard Lena's trembling voice in the radio, those who had watched her fight for every minute in the sky, and those who had silently prayed she would survive. Lena stood among them, her uniform freshly cleaned, but her eyes still tired, still carrying the weight of yesterday's impossible flight. Her captain, Collins, rested in the medical wing, stable but recovering. The thought gave her comfort. She had done what she set out to do. She had brought him home. General Lawson stepped forward with a quiet authority, his gaze sweeping over the small crowd. He spoke very little. He didn't need to. "Flight Officer Lena Hayes," he said simply. "Step forward." Lena's breath hitched, but she obeyed. She walked until she stood alone in the center, surrounded by the very people she admired. Pilots she had once thought were far beyond her. For a moment, the world felt still, as if the sky itself paused to listen. Then the F-22 pilots moved as one, stepping forward in formation. They didn't shout. They didn't clap. Instead, in perfect unison, they spoke her new call sign, Angel. But their voices weren't loud. They didn't thunder across the field. They were soft, soft like respect, soft like a quiet prayer for safe flights and safe returns. The gentle way they said it made her chest tighten with emotion. Angel, not as a nickname, not as a title, but as a recognition of the courage she had shown, alone in a dying aircraft, refusing to give up even when everything seemed lost. Lena lowered her gaze, trying, and failing, to stop the tears that rose in her eyes. She felt undeserving, yet deeply grateful. A call sign wasn't just a name. It was a story, a legacy, a reminder of who she had been in the sky and who she had become because of it. Months passed. Life at the base slowly returned to routine. Collins recovered completely, stubborn as ever, cracking jokes about how she saved him, just so he'd owe her a lifetime of coffee. Sometimes he found her near the aircraft she had landed, running her hand along its patched metal skin, remembering each moment of that flight. "You sure you're ready to fly again?" he asked her one afternoon, leaning against the wing with a playful smirk. Lena smiled softly. "I don't know, but I know the sky isn't done with me." She was right. Every time a plane took off from the base, someone, sometimes a pilot, sometimes a technician, would whisper over the radio before the engines roared to full power, "Fly safe, Angel." It became a quiet tradition, a reminder of her courage, a symbol of hope for new pilots who feared failing, a message that even when everything falls apart, strength can rise from the smallest, quietest hearts. Lena never sought fame, and she never wanted medals. What mattered to her was far simpler, knowing she had done everything she could in the moment when life demanded everything from her. And because of that, her story spread, not loudly, not publicly, but respectfully through the halls of the base, in conversations between pilots, in the quiet admiration of those who trained beside her. She became the kind of legend that doesn't need a spotlight to shine. Her courage did not echo in shouts. It lived in silence, in the hush of the sky, in the wings of every pilot who whispered her call sign before takeoff. Because in the heart of aviation, where the sky tests every weakness and courage is measured in seconds, her name became something more than a call sign. It became a promise that no matter how dark the sky becomes, there is always someone brave enough to guide a broken plane home.